Professor of Health Science at the University of Ottawa. Dr. Welcome, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am good. I'm feeling, I think, what all Canada is feeling today on this national show. You're trying to tap into the minds of all Canadians. We're feeling the sunshine, we're feeling the summer, and yet we are very trepidatious here. We're wary. We're watching these openings. We want to do things, but we don't want to screw it up because we know that's possible. How is that playing out in this opening as the country watches Ontario here?
I think it's going well. The reopening framework that was released yesterday, to me, looks rather sensible and sane and responsible. Shockingly so, one might say. So, I mean, it has to be gated towards indicators, not arbitrary dates. And they've done that. They haven't set dates. They've set benchmarks. And there are three categories of indicators I like to think about: the epidemiological ones, the health system ones, and the population ones. So the epidemiological indicators are things like the reproduction number, the test positivity rate, the incidence rate, things that we've all become accustomed to this past year. And the population indicators are the vaccination rate. And for the most part, this seems to be gated and linked to vaccination rate. That's understandable. That's what people can wrap their minds around, and it's something that they can be a part of. But the last one is the one that I think is most critical. That's the health systems indicator. In particular, how much hospital capacity we have. And hospital capacity is a lagging indicator. We're going to struggle with hospital capacity for weeks, if not months, after the cases come down. So even though things may look great, so long as there isn't space in the hospital, we have to be a little cautious about this. But overall, I think this reopening plan is pretty good, and it's got a lot. It's got a lot of flexibility. What it doesn't have, though, is clarity on how we go backwards if need be. And I hope there isn't a need for it, but there might be. We need a lever for that.
What do you make of where the country is right now as we get ready to reopen? Are we on the cusp of things? Are there signs? Because as you say, you've laid it out so beautifully, we have all those indicators. We're trained. We've been in this for a year. We know to listen for the reproductive factor. We know to listen for how our hospitals are doing, and also on the other areas and those numbers that have crowded into our head. As a country, have we come together at all? Is there a sign that Canada, people could talk about what's happening in Canada like we do in the United States?
Well, we have a large, diverse, heterogeneous population and geographical setup, so it's different around the country. Maritime provinces have done overwhelmingly better than the rest of the country for the most part. This has been a story mostly of four provinces: BC, Ontario, Alberta, and Quebec. But lately, Manitoba is having a really hard time in terms of the rise of cases. In general, though, like globally, we are probably past the peak of the second wave, or third or fourth wave, depending upon where you live in the world, but past the peak of this current wave. But there are going to be some hot spots. Globally, we're talking parts of India, and nationally, we're talking like Manitoba. In general, though, I think we're on a strong trajectory to goodness. I think this current wave looks like it's going to taper out mostly by the end of June, unless something really bad happens, like we open up too fast, or new variants take hold, or we don't accept vaccinations as quickly as we should. But I think there's a lot of optimism here, and Canadians should be inspired to keep on doing the right thing, which means reducing your exposure rate and accepting vaccination, because the summer's looking good.
One of the controversial aspects, and it got battled about on social media and in other parts of the media, is the closing of the schools, and whether or not that was something that was holding people back, or whether that was a key component. You've laid out the key components, and we do have doctors who disagree and say the schools should be open. What are your thoughts on
The,
keeping them closed?
the way that I perceive the modeling data is that closing the schools prevented a healthcare catastrophe in Ontario and other parts of the nation where that happened. Opening schools now, I think, would be a mistake. I understand for the purposes of children's well-being and mental health, schools are important. However, for the purposes of managing a pandemic, it's pretty clear to me that schools are pandemic accelerators. The schools themselves are safe. Your kids are overwhelmingly safe. It's just that they contribute to community transmission sufficiently that it jeopardizes the opening plans. So what do you get from opening schools for like another month? You get, some quality of education and mental health for kids, but you jeopardize the long-term wherewithal of the nation and of these kids in general if they can't have a proper summer. So my feeling is keep them closed, I'm reading a paper right now as we speak from Texas looking at how their premature reopening of schools cost them probably 43,000 additional COVID cases, 1,000 deaths linked, according to their analysis, to school openings. So we don't want to be that. It strikes me that the responsible thing to do is to keep our foot on the brake, open things up slowly, including putting off school openings until the fall, probably.
How and let me ask you, are you shocked, surprised, disturbed? How do you feel that there is a robust disagreement within the medical community on this?
It's well, I want to say frustrating, but I shouldn't be frustrated because this is the nature of science. If we all agreed,
Mhm.
there wouldn't be a need for a large scientific population. But the distribution is important. It isn't half and half. There's those who look at modeling and data, I think, err towards the side of closing things, closing schools. Those who look at the experiences of the children themselves will look at erring towards opening schools. So it depends on what you care about. And it's ultimately a values question. Do you value the opening strategy more than the temporary wherewithal of your children, or the reverse? And I can't answer that question. So much of pandemic management is about individual values and equity and distribution of resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as we've learned throughout these past 15 months. It isn't just about disease management. It's about what we care about.
All right, I want to ask you something. We're heading, of course, into a long weekend, and we had a warning from Premier Doug Ford, not to blow it this long weekend. It's happening in cities and towns and provinces all across the country. We know that whenever there's a holiday and people gather, the cases go up. How important is it not to get, to use a modern cliche, over our skis on this? We have vaccinations, we have warm weather. How important is the intersection of still using care here? We're talking about how this virus, closed spaces, what's in the air, how close we can be to people, masks, all those things. How much of a key component is that for this weekend?
Oh boy, it's everything. Science literacy is everything as well. We can see the finish line. It's ahead of us. Now the question is it 5 kilometers away or 50 kilometers away? We want to sprint to the finish line, but we shouldn't. We need to take our time and get there slowly and make sure we do so safely. Now, I mentioned the science literacy part because people have a tendency to think of vaccination as a perfect bulletproof shield. It isn't. Vaccination has a failure rate, and so long as the disease is prevalent, it will find holes in our defenses. So even though you might be vaccinated and your friends might be, etc., that doesn't mean you can let your guard down because the disease is still around us. We have to wait until the disease diminishes so the probability of it finding holes in our defenses also diminishes. Right? This is not interminable. It just means a bit longer. And it's a gradual opening process. There isn't going to be a magical day when suddenly a switch is flipped and everything opens up. One by one, mitigation tools will be lifted and our fears will dissipate and society will go back to normal. But it's going to be a gradual process. So I call upon everyone to take your time, still be vigilant and cautious, and celebrate the warm weather, celebrate the fact that we're on a trajectory to normal, because we are on a trajectory to normal. We're going to win this battle, and it's pretty clear now that the end is in sight, but can't rush to it, can't sprint to that finish line.
Uh, you know, a lot of doctors are trying to describe things, and they've been challenged. You've all been challenged right now, and you got it. Your messaging, just from my media point of view, I'm thinking, okay, these doctors are all, describing all these pictures at this time. Dr. Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist, associate professor of health science at the University of Ottawa, joining us live. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Stu.